now. All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Marcus Duran, and I'll be introducing you guys today to our fabulous team here at Brand Ed. So today, the session we're going to go over is going to be called Business Units and Pardot Sandbox Lessons Learned. And I'm going to introduce here Pooja and Alicia from the Brand Ed team. So I'm going to give it away to Pooja.
Thank you, Marcos. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our presentation. Alessia and I are going to be walking you through our experience of business units and the Pardot Sandbox. So I'll start off with introducing us. Alessia Imola is the head of MarTech, and I am the director of project management. We do both wear multiple hats within our organization. We are involved in the tactical and strategic aspects of marketing automation as well as technology at Brand Ed. And we have multiple roles, but we're pretty much involved with everything to do with Salesforce and Pardot. Alessia is the official Salesforce admin, and we're both Pardot admins within Brand Ed. So who is Brand Ed? Who are we? Brand Ed is an umbrella company that encompasses a few luxury education institutions offering degree as well as non-degree programs. Our target audience is pre-college students, undergraduate and graduate students, professionals, and art collectors. We have locations in New York and London, and we have partnerships with international institutions in China, South Korea, and Mexico. And we continue to grow. We are small, but we're very complicated just because of our global nature and the multitude of offerings that we have, as you could tell. So at this point, I'll hand off to Alessia so she can talk you through what we're going to cover and how we're set up here.
Thanks, Pooja, and hello, everyone. Today we'll be talking about our experience with the Pardot Sandbox and the Pardot Business Units, and providing you with a list of resources that have been helpful to us during our implementation. But let's look at how we got here. About 2.5 years ago, we had multiple Salesforce orgs within Brand Ed, which was really a representative on how we were structured. Really essentially different organizations across. We had one Pardot org linked to one Salesforce org, which we only use for one of the organizations. So sometimes in 2019, we had a reorg where the shared service model was established. And as a result, we made the decision to consolidate the marketing and IT systems resources across our sub-entities. We currently have one Salesforce org and one Pardot org that supports all our sub-entities across. We also took this reorg opportunity to define digital innovations and MarTech as our long-term goal by using Salesforce and Pardot. And this really helped us to streamline our thinking so we could align our configuration with that specific goal in mind. One of the main drivers for us has been also the desire to implement a system that will allow us to be nimble around scalability. So really working with one Salesforce org and one Pardot account has been really a no-brainer. We were also really eager to get more granular around the way we track campaigns ROI, attribution, and leverage more the Pardot and Salesforce potentials. So really moving away from some of the old system that we were using for us was really a must. And we also are a small team, and where myself and Pooja are really much involved in the Pardot settings, as well as the front end of the Salesforce admin. We also have 2 developers. They're involved in on our operations, and they are more focused on the back end. And we also have 1 developer that takes care of the look and feel of the products that we roll out. With that said, as you can all imagine, we all wearing multiple hats, and we all working across different projects within our organization. And but overall, the Pardot Sandbox was a big stepping stone, and business units, really help us to organize our data and processes around our sub-entities in the way we want it. So I'm now going to walk you through our sandbox learnings using the following feature for the first time. So for the ones new to this concept, Pardot Sandbox allow to configure Pardot in a testing environment. And you can use it to build and test configuration without risking disrupting business operations. Some of the key information to keep in mind during the utilization of this feature is that, first of all, this is super important. You need to have a full Salesforce sandbox in order to implement the Pardot one. Also, a really important side note is that you need to be mindful that if you refresh the Salesforce sandbox, the Pardot sandbox gets deleted right away when a refresh is performed on the Salesforce end. The second one is that you need to you need to follow the step to uninstall and delete the B2B MA package, as this is a really important step. For example, we recently refreshed Salesforce Sandbox, and we started implementing the business unit. And at one point we got stuck and we could not really figure out why. So make sure we uninstall and install it back, otherwise you're gonna end up stuck too. That once that's done, you can install the Pardot Sandbox package and then go ahead and configure the sandbox and profile permission, as is all described in the Pardot implementation guide. And moving into configurations, into the next slide. So around the configuration, we included some high-level information that you should keep in mind during this process. So generally speaking, the most important things to actually test in Pardot Sandbox are items related to the data flowing between Pardot and Salesforce. So especially when you're implementing the business unit, this is a really important thing to keep in mind. And we also listed some key elements for you to keep in mind throughout this process, is that you cannot perform email sending or even testing email sending from a sandbox. You cannot implement Salesforce Engage or experiment with B2B marketing analytics. And third one, you cannot perform change sets. So what it means is that you must manually recreate the configuration each time, or you will have to manually migrate all your assets, including forms, landing pages, files, and so on. And lastly, you need to have a Pardot Advanced account or higher than that in order to access the tool. And if you don't have such account, you can contact your rep to find out how you can buy this separately. And I'm now gonna hand it off back to Pooja. She's gonna walk you through our use of the Pardot Business Units. The product itself is a relatively new concept, which was introduced only in 2019. And for the ones, again, new to this tool, the Pardot Business Units are essentially a way to partition your main Pardot account for different regions, products, brand, and so on.
Thank you, Alessia. So as Alessia mentioned, business units basically allow you to segregate your data based on your company's needs. We actually use business units to segregate by sub-entity. So essentially, we have a one-to-one relationship between each sub-entity and business unit that we've set up in Pardot. Additionally, we had a challenge over and above that, which was within each sub-entity, we have multiple programs that we offer. And a prospect could come in and express interest in more than one program and purchase more than one program. So we needed to figure out that, we set up these business units by sub-entity. Now, how do we track these multiple program interests within each business unit? So we consulted with a number of Salesforce and Pardot experts, including Marcos, and we brainstormed internally, and this is the design we finally came up with. So the middle column here is how we've set up things in Salesforce, and then the columns on the left and the right are how we've set up things in Pardot. So in the middle, you can see that on the Salesforce end, we have a record type that represents each BU, and then or sub-entity pretty much. And then we mirror that configuration on the Pardot end by setting up a business unit for every sub-entity. Within Pardot, then we set up radio buttons for every program of interest. So you see the BU product 1, BU product 2 on the left and the right. And in Salesforce, we set up a child object under the lead object that now allows us to capture those programs of interest and track them through the prospect's lifecycle. So this design took us a while to come up with, and there were multiple steps involved. What I'm going to focus here today is pretty much how we came to that conclusion for business units. So in order to set up business units, very logical kind of steps here. You first make your business-related decisions, then you make configuration decisions based off of those business-related decisions. And then finally, you go in and set up your system, although the temptation might be to kind of just approach it and go set up your system. And then what are the business decisions that need to be made in order to do business unit setup? So first and foremost is obviously, is there a business reason around why you need business units? Do you have multiple locations that you need to segregate data by? Do you have multiple entities like us? Or does your org structure require that you do that, or any other reason for that matter? And then who's going to administer each of your business units if you do decide to go with business units? And who are the users that are going to access data within each of your business units? And finally, it's really important to kind of identify all the entry points for your prospects, whether they're going to come from your website, from events, or any other source. Once you've made your business decisions, then you kind of drill down a little bit deeper and go on to defining what those business units are going to be named, what levels of access your users are going to have, and within each of the categories of prospect data entry sources, identify the actual data source. So if your categories were website and events, then from the website, it's landing pages as well as lead forms. From events, it's basically Eventbrite is a tool that you might be using. So those leads are coming from Eventbrite. So the actual sources within each category. And finally, you need to identify a custom field for each business unit and object combination to segregate data. And what I mean by that is, this is an example. So you see on the left is a sample business unit, Mexico. And then on the right is Brazil. So we're assuming this company wants to segregate their data by location. Underneath that, you see all the sources of where prospects might come in from, the landing page, gated content, Eventbrite, and so on. And then on the bottom, the boxes that you see represent the custom field that I was just referring to. So we've got a custom field for the lead object and a custom field for the opportunity object for both Mexico and Brazil. And the key thing here is making sure you know how each of those custom fields are being set from each of those prospect data sources. So you have to build that into your form handler setup or your lead forms and so forth. And then the final step here is setting up the actual system. So again, one level deeper after you've defined your business decisions and your configuration decisions is to actually configure those business units, set up your admins, map out your users, and then go into Salesforce and create the custom fields that you decided and with whatever name you had decided for each object out there, whether it's a standard object, lead, contact, and opportunity, or custom objects that you might have mapped to Pardot. And then finally, to navigate to Pardot, in Pardot to marketing data sharing, which is this screen, and set up your criteria. So this is under the, let's assume the Mexico business unit, because that's the custom field that this is referring to. We're setting up marketing data sharing for Mexico. The criteria you see on the right column is what we're using the custom fields in. And then you've got your objects on the left. So for lead, if the Mexico Pardot BU checkbox is set to true, then that data is segregated within the Mexico business unit, and so on. Just a few things to keep in mind when you are setting up the system is, one, you cannot delete a business unit, so be careful about that. For each object, you can only have one marketing data sharing rule. And each rule can be based on one Salesforce field and uses the equal to operator, as you see on this screen. And that field that you're using for marketing data sharing cannot be mapped between Pardot and Salesforce. It's only used for the purposes of marketing data sharing in Pardot. Last pointer is that your record sync is not determined by your marketing data sharing. That's determined by the default setting for each object using the connector user's permissions. So do keep that in mind when you're setting this up. At this point, I'll hand off to Alessia so she can walk you through a few other discoveries that we made while we were setting up business units, and also get into how long it took us to do everything.
Yeah. So additional information for you to keep in mind during this process is that for the business unit setup, you can only use the V2 connector, and you need to set up one connector for each of the business units. The same goes for marketing data sharing rules. They need to be set up separately each for one of the business unit for each of the business units. And when setting up campaigns, make sure to split them up by record type. And the other thing you need to do is you're gonna have the same root tracker domain, but you can have different subdomains within the same business unit. And finally, we also wanted to share some lessons which we learned along the way and contradict with some of the materials that we sometimes read around on the web. You can perhaps set up a business unit and a sandbox on your own if your Pardot requirements are not too complicated. And if you have internal staff that are really quite experienced with Pardot, our approach on this respect was really staggered one. I was really staggered. So we have kept it simple in terms of automation as a stage one, and the plan is to scale up as we go along. You might want to do the same, especially if you're working with a small team. The other myth that we read is that Pardot Sandbox can be configured with a single BU, and that's not the case. So really, let's move into the next slide and look at how long will it take us. We spent approximately 60 days on this implementation while we were working on other projects on the side. And as part of the implementation, as we mentioned earlier, we actually carry out major transformative tasks, such as the migration of an old Pardot account into the new one using the business unit. We also now leveraging BU, and we have a completely new set of data architecture. And we also gone through the redesign of our inquiry forms and the lead management and the scoring models. But among all those items, what really took us the most of the time? So really the business requirements around the product interest solution, for sure, the one that Pooja talked to you about earlier. We spent quite some time researching on it to analyze the pros and cons in order to initiate the building. And as we also did this on our own, and we were both doing it for the first time, we occurred in instances where we could not really predict certain issues or limitations until we faced those. So really a big important lesson learned from us was surely to try to think creatively and trying to think out of the box in order to tackle blockers that come your way. So and also you make sure that you have enough slack time so those blockers won't really have a negative impact on your project timeline. So really once we map that all out and we define the business the business requirement about the product interest, we started looking at the user journey, and we look at all our entry points and we defining a different behavior that we want the prospect to follow, both from a system perspective and from a user standpoint. And as a result, we closely work with our content and sales team, and we set up different engagement studios by program of interest to make sure we were delivering information tailored to the prospect's interests. Also, as we said earlier, we carry out the implementation with our partners' helps. So we spent quite some time researching material, brainstorming, and talking to supports to make sure we were not leaving any important piece behind. We also often posted on the Trailblazer community groups, and people there have been truly, truly amazing, sharing some really good insights from their own experience. And lastly, we decided to migrate from our old accounts, only active prospects from the last few months. However, we had a historical messy mailable database that we didn't want to fully leave behind, or having to go through an extensive data cleanup or data migration effort. So what we decided to do in a kind of creative way was to run a self-migration campaign for the inactive records. And since these people were really sleepy customers and sometimes some bad data too, which we were not going to migrate anyway, we have emailed them saying that if they would want to continue hearing from us, they should click on a particular CTA. And that particular CTA was connected to the new form that we implement in the new BU. So the ones that actually decided to continue hearing from us are now living in the new Pardot account, and we actually have additional data point for them, which we didn't have anymore because we changed the lead capture and we included additional questions. So moving to the next slide. As we mentioned earlier, we found extremely helpful the various resources that we have came across during our journey, and we would like to give it back as much as we can. So in the next slide, you're gonna see the most useful resources, articles or blogs that we come across, and they're all organized in one place for you. This one in particular is around the business units. On the left, you're gonna see the one from Salesforce, on the right, the ones from the partners. And we don't have time to pause here, but feel free to reach out at the end of this presentation. We will be happy to share the deck and send it your way. And I think we are up to the minutes. So thank you very much, everyone. We hope you enjoy hearing about our journey and that you find our information helpful to you. If we did it, you can do it as well. So let us know if you have any question. And if you're undertaking a similar process, feel free to get in touch.
Awesome. Thank you both very much for presenting on these two topics. We have time for maybe one question. So if anybody has a question, feel free to throw it on chat and we can answer it quickly. All right. I think we're good. Good job, everybody. Thank you very much for everybody that attended. And you'll have the recording here a little bit later. If you have time, please join us on the discussion boards on Genius Bar. And thank you to all of our sponsors. Thank you, Pooja, and thank you, Alicia, again. Have a good rest of your day, everybody. Enjoy Part Dreaming.